All right, I've started the recording and we're just going to go ahead and get started with what we got here. We might have a few stragglers coming in, but that's all right. Thank you all for coming. My name is Angelee. I work here at Chenard's, and today I'm going to be talking to you about blueberries. I additionally have with me my co-host here with me, Camille. She's going to be running the background of things, answering questions in the chat as we go, if you're interested in that. Additionally, she'll be muting people as we go if people come on, their microphones come on or something like that. So if you want to speak and you want your thing unmuted, we can always talk to her in the chat and get that going. So feel free to ask any questions either in the chat or in the presentation as I go along, and we'll also open the floor at the end for questions a little more in depth if you're interested. So we're going to go ahead and just get started here. Alrighty. I'm actually, sorry, I'm going to do this just a little bit different of a way here. I like the way that looks. Again, my name is Angelee. I'm here to talk to you guys about blueberries. We're going to be talking about how to do it strategically and about what timing is great and when to get started and how to care for them throughout their life. So let's go ahead and get started with the section of what you should know before you head to the store. So what is a blueberry plant even? These are large perennial shrubs, usually about 5 to 9 feet. And they're super interesting year round. They're great all year round, as in the spring, they have their flowers. Summer, they're providing you blueberries with their bright green foliage. Fall comes and they turn their leaves to red dormancy colors, or on their way to dormancy. And then in winter, they expose us with their beautiful bright red stems. So it's a great option for everyone, whether you have the space to do these 5 to 9 foot shrubs, or you can, there's options even for your small patio gardeners like me. So we'll talk a little bit more about those options available to you. So, but first we're gonna get a good grounding of the types of blueberries and what we're looking at here. So in the United States, there are 5 major types grown. Different types will thrive in your different ecosystems. For our area, the northern high bush works the best, so this is where our focus is going to be today. There are many high bush species, or there are many varieties within the high bush species that come in fun dwarf sizes for your patio gardeners, flavors that taste different than your normal blueberry, and even things like pink berries of the pink lemonade blueberry, which is just absolutely delicious. Growing different varieties can have wildly different growing qualities. Like I said, the mature size, some get 9 feet while some stay 1.5 feet. Pollination needs, some are self-fertile, but some require that cross-pollination, as well as fruiting times. So some fruit multiple times a year, some you're only going to get at the beginning of spring. And also evergreen, they're bred for evergreen qualities. So if you're looking for some nice, beautiful foliage throughout the winter, you can look to those as well. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what you should think about while you're purchasing your plants. An important thing to think about is timing. The ideal time to plant is during dormancy, as it minimizes the shock and maximizes your water availability during that summer heat and drought that they might be experiencing come summer. So to ensure your top quality, it is a good idea to buy bare root, which we have here at Chenard's now. This is kind of what you're going to run into. As for bare root crop, we have about 10 plants per pot, and when you get here, we're just going to pull them out, expose their roots, wrap them up real nicely so you can just plop them straight into the ground, straight into your soil. Easiest way to plant and the best way to ensure the top quality. So as you're getting ready to buy your plant, you're going to want to think about the space available to you at your home. As I went over before, many of these varieties can get quite large. So if you need this a plant that takes up less space, you're going to want a variety that stays small. Additionally, blueberries need that full sun to thrive and make their berries and produce high yield. So make sure that your area is going to receive adequate sun as they grow. Make sure to pay attention to the surrounding plants and their growth rates as well. If you plant near a conifer tree or an arborvitae that's going to grow several feet within the next few years, you're going to want to make sure that it's not going to shade out your newly planted blueberry. As they live for 15 years, they're going to need sun for the whole time. So if you lack the space like me, consider varieties suited for containers. You can move those around if you move frequently, and you can also move them around your property to expose them to sun as best you can. Next, we're going to be talking about pollination, as pollination is absolutely necessary for fruit to set. Always ensure that your plant is able to pollinate. Do this either by buying self-pollinating plants or purchasing cross-pollinating varieties. Cross-pollinating plants must be within 100 feet of each other. You're more likely to get your cross-pollination if they're closer than 100 feet, but that's about a max. You don't want them any further than that. And the idea is to have them flowering at the same time, and that's how you get that cross-pollination. Even with self-pollinating hybrids, they can increase yield and production with pollination. So if you're worried about your plants pollinating, because bees don't like to come out until it's warm outside, and some of these blueberries will start flowering in early spring, maybe consider keeping mason bees for those early season flowers. Cute little bumblebee. So the fun part is choosing a cultivar that suits you. There's many different options, different qualities in each type of variety. So keep all the qualities in mind that are important to you, such as mature size, if you would like it to be evergreen, when it's flowering and when it's fruiting, what kind of pollination needs it has, what kind of taste or quality you're looking for, and how much production and yield you need. For sizing options, there's plants smaller than 3 feet. These jelly beans, midnight cascades, and peach sorbets are all fun options for container plants. If you're looking for something a little bit in between, consider Perpetua or pink icing. And 5 and up are pretty much your standard blueberries like Duke, Early Blue, and Toro. This is what one of our end caps at Chenard's looks like right now, full of blueberries. So ensuring pollination. So you're going to know the flowering, you're going to need to know the flowering and fruiting time. So keep that in mind. The early season flowers are going to be your Early Blue and Oak. Mid-season, Berkeley, Blue Crop, Blue Ray. And late season is the Elliott and the Ivanhoe. Keep in mind, some of these have overlapping fruiting times, and so you can increase your options with that as well. Taste is a really important thing for some people. Some people really enjoy your sweet berries like Early Blue and Jersey. A lot of the fun flavors are really sweet, like the pink lemonade are extremely sweet as well. Some people like your tart, like your Coville and Elliott, and some just prefer them for cooking and making jams. Here are some very fun options, different flavors for blueberries that you wouldn't even consider, like a raspberry flavor or a peach flavor or a jelly bean flavor. We have these, there's people out there making these, as well as fun colors for berries like pink icing, pink lemonade, and these bountiful blue. Their foliage is just beautiful. And a lot of these are great for containers as they stay small, like the Midnight Cascade, which actually recommends using hanging baskets as they'll cascade over the edges. Or Perpetua, which will produce fruit multiple times a year. And here's a few of what we have for container stock, what they look like. At the top, you'll see some cascading blueberries. And at the bottom is the bountiful blue, and both of them are considered evergreen. So lastly, we're going to talk about these successful package options. These are things that you're going to want to consider purchasing with your blueberry plant to make sure to give it a good step forward in its life, such as soil for amending with the native soil, mulch for keeping down the weeds, fertilizer to get it going, growing fast, healthy, and full, root stimulator so that it gets established there, fungicide for any issues you might run in with disease. Pruners is something you're definitely going to need because you're going to have to prune year after year. And think about irrigation because watering is vital for the long-term health of the plant. These are options, all options that are just going to be great for you to keep your blueberry plant healthy moving forward. So consider buying these options as well. So next, we're going to talk about planting. So fall and spring are the best times of year for planting. These are wet times of year that allow your plants to get established and ready for the drought seasons coming up. Fall and winter, I would say, are also are more ideal over spring, just so that it can really get established and ready for that summer, like I said. Ensure that it's full sun for its whole life, and that means proper spacing between plants as well. Don't try to put them too close to each other because they can grow quite huge and they're going to be set there for a while. A good rule of thumb is that 1 to 2 plants per person is a great option because 1 plant can produce up to 15 pounds of berries. This is a little different for your container blueberries and whatnot, but it's a good little standard to follow. So addressing soil needs at planting. This is something that's really important. Check the pH of your soil. It's not as daunting as you might think. We do sell a few soil test kits here at Chenard's, and there are a few options available for you online as well. It's a good idea to understand where the pH is in your soil. Blueberries like it ideally between 4.5 and 5.5. And you can reach this pH by either amending your native soil with acid planting mix, or adding elemental sulfur, or fertilizing with some sort of acidic fertilizer. So at planting, we would recommend removing half of the native soil that you removed from your hole and mix it and amend it with either soil building conditioner, which is great for drainage, or the acid planting mix, which will reduce the pH of your soil. Additionally, we would recommend mulching 2 inches above, add mulch 2 inches above the root zone. So above the soil, 2 inches above the soil around the root zone, keeping in mind to keep the material 1 inch away from the stalk because you don't want to add any added moisture right up next to the stalk. You can use multiple things for mulch, as in compost, bark mulch, acid planting mix, the soil building conditioner, filbert shells, sawdust, whatever. Using mulch will suppress weeds and help keep in moisture for your plant. So we would just highly recommend that you do that for yourself and your plant. So at planting, you're going to be addressing your water needs. You're going to have to consider how you're going to be getting water to your plant before you plant it there. Because if you have to hike 3 gallons of water 3 miles a day, your blueberry plant is likely to die because who wants to do that? So make sure your plant is going to have access to water and that it's going to be convenient for you to water it when it needs it. So at planting, make sure to thoroughly water your new blueberry plant to help it get established. And for the first year of its life, be super sensitive to when you're watering because they're going to need that to get established to promote its life for the future. And also keep in mind that if you are containering blueberry plants, they're going to require more frequent water as well as a more deep watering. So keeping that in mind as you're moving forward. Alrighty, so planting, we went to the store, we planted it. Now how do I keep it alive for the next 15 years? So this is a long-term shrub and it's gonna be your friend giving you food for possibly up to 15 years. So you're gonna wanna take care of it like it's a member of your family to help give it a longer and more fruitful life. You can do this with a routine care and a schedule and a plan. And I'll help you figure out what to do here. And first, we're going to go over ensuring pollination again, because it's so important. Because without pollination, there is no fruit. So, and pollination is just going to be especially important for your early season bloomers and your cross-pollinating plants. Early season bloomers, there's just not a lot of pollinators out here at that time because it's still cold around. So if you're worried about your early season bloomers, like I said before, consider keeping mason bees, which you can see an example house in the lower right-hand corner, and an actual mason bee in the lower left-hand corner, which he's just adorable and tiny. So in Oregon, we have almost over 300 native bees. We have beetles, flies, and wasps that are all great pollinators. So it's not just the honeybees out here doing the work. So go ahead and promote some natural pollination with some pollinator-friendly gardening practices. And I'll help point those out to you here. They're easier than you might think they are. They're easy peasy, actually. So the best thing you can do is just do nothing at all. Surprising, I know. Leave your leaves out, your branches, and your trimmings. This will help provide material and nesting for native bees and beetles. Leave your bare soil alone and use drip irrigation, which is great for your underground nesting insects. Plant native pollinator plants. And when you're planting plants for pollinators, think diversity. The more options they can have, the better. Native plants feed native bees, and they're gonna just want the native diversity as best as they can. So, and above all, always, 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 always follow the chemical directions with your pollinator friends in mind. Next, on the importancy scale is fertilizing. You're going to need to fertilize to maintain the health and maximize the yield of your blueberries. We're going to see fertilizing ideally about 3 times a year, April, May, June. This will give them the push that they need to really put on that green growth in the berries for a high yield. There's many options for you to be able to fertilize your plants, including all-purpose fertilizers, blueberry-specific fertilizers, and rhododendron and azalea fertilizers. The latter two will slowly acidify the soil, so keep that in mind as you're fertilizing as well. Watering. So again, I said before, they're sensitive to their first year of watering. Once they get established, they're a little less sensitive, but it's always good to have consistent watering, as it helps with yields and sugar contents. You're just going to have all around better berries. So with plants planted in the ground, that's ideally about 2 inches of saturation below the soil a week. Again, I mentioned container plants require a more frequent and deep watering. Do not let those puppies dry out, especially in black pots. They're going to want to in that summer heat. It's going to be hard. Make sure you have your mulching. It's going to help. So again, consider how you will be watering these babies. Can your hose reach them? Are you going to have to pull out your watering can? Or should you just do yourself the favor and invest in an automatic irrigation system? Harvest. This is what we've been waiting for, but be patient because you don't want your sour berries unripe. So these berries often will start green, pink, then blue. You can see a little picture down there. It's got all varieties of stages of blueberry. When they are totally ripe, they will easily roll off or jostle off the plant. I don't know if you've seen how they harvest these commercially, but they have a giant machine with fingers that just vibrate over the plant. It's actually quite fun to watch. I would have included a video if I could, but they literally will just fall right off the plant when jostled. So You want to keep them in the fridge for about a week. Or they will keep in the fridge for a week. You can eat them right off the plant. There's no need to refrigerate them before eating, but they will keep happily in the refrigerator for about a week. You can also freeze them to increase the amount of usage time. So pruning is extremely important for the health of your plant. You're going to want to do it during dormancy. You're going to want, if it's non-evergreen, so if it's deciduous, you're going to want to wait until all the leaves are off of it to do your pruning. And you're not going to want to wait any later than early March, as your plants are going to start returning to the growing stage when the weather starts heating up. So why would I want to do this? It helps promote new growth, better yields, air circulation, and removes the bad wood. So it's just all around great. Helps promote any fungus issues, and because the best berry growth is on 1-year-old branches, you're just going to increase your yield. So these 1-year-old branches that you're going to want to keep during pruning are going to be 8 to 12 inches long. When you cut them back, cut back directly to the stock of the plant as flat as you can. The older the plant is, the more stems and canes you're going to have as it grows. In total, you can take about 25% of the total mass. So you're going to want to make sure always to cut out the dead, damaged, and diseased wood. It'll look pretty apparent next to the healthy stuff. Remove at the base all the wisps that are smaller than a pencil size. No need to keep those. And the idea is to open up the middle of the plant to allow circulation and light to reach the inside petals. So you can reduce any fungal issues, any mildew issues, any insect issues, and it's easier to treat if you run into those issues as well. So another idea is just to maintain an equal number of 1-, 2-, and 3-year-old canes. Don't let it discourage you. It's easier than you think. They can take the pruning. They'll be super happy that you did it. Keep your eyes out for any pests and disease that you may run into. For animals, the best way to deter them or to get rid of them or protect your berries is to use deterrents or physical barriers. Here I have a few bird options available in pictures here. On the left is just like a colorful shiny tape that just scares them away or deters them from even coming to the plant. And then there's a physical net barrier that physically stops them from getting to the berries. If you're running into insect issues, consider using a spinosad spray. You're going to want to cover every part of the plant with the spray. Read your chemical instructions and keep the chemicals off of the flowers usually. Keep your pollinator insects in mind. Don't put them in trouble if you don't have to. And avoid using any systematic insecticides as well, because you do not want to ingest the insecticidal chemicals into your body. So just don't do that. These plants are for eating. And any diseases you might run into, you're likely to run into mummyberry or botrytis first. Proper pruning will prevent these. Prevention is key, so always keep your plant as healthy as possible. But if you're running into these diseases, just a regular old fungicide will help. And then also you can treat with a copper fungicide during the dormancy period. So thank you for joining me today for blueberry strategic planning and planting and buying. And I hope that you learned something new and can feel a little more confident moving forward with your blueberry planting. And I would like to open the floor up for anyone who is interested in asking any questions. Camille, did you run into any questions I should address on here, you think?
I did have an interesting question about if you're just watering with a hose versus an irrigation system, how long does it take to get your 2-inch mark? And I don't know exactly how to explain that.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, a hose is going to be more efficient and dumping it directly into the ground versus if you're doing like a drip irrigation, which will slowly release water over a time period. And, you know, it all depends on water flow and pressure as well. You can physically stick your finger in the soil about 2 inches down if you're worried about it. And that'll give you a good indicator on where the water level is at. I would guess that with a hose, it would take no more than 5 minutes to get 2 inches. No more than 3 to 5 minutes, I would guess. It'll be much easier to tell when a containered blueberry plant needs watering, as you could lift it up, feel how light it is, and you know, it's easier to stick your finger down in that soil too as well, versus, you know, into the ground. You can also buy a moisture meter if you're really worried about it, which would give you a really good indication on what the moisture is actually doing below the surface level. Any other fun question? Is anyone excited about their blueberries they got this year? How often, I see a question here, how often do you add mulch? So you're always just going to want to maintain that 2-inch barrier above your soil to help keep the weeds down, keep the light off the direct soil, and to help increase the moisture. So just keep an eye on it. Make sure that you have that, maintain that 2 inches. Copy of the recording. This will be on YouTube. Also, if you're interested in other topics that I touched here, like mason beekeeping, we have more information on that as well on our YouTube page as well. That's a really interesting class. I would totally suggest you looking into that.
Angela, lost connection there for a minute. Have you been looking at the chat questions?
I'm scrolling down from the beginning, so I'm just kind of going through any. I haven't made it to the bottom. Looks like we have actually 11 new. Should you remove all the 3- and 4-year-old canes? Oh, well, hold on. Let me see. Cedar mulch, Doug mulch. These are all these mulches would do just fine as long as you're paying attention to how it might be affecting the pH in your soil. How much fertilizer per plant? That's a good question. You're always going to want to read what it recommends on the package. How do you apply to a plant? You can mix it into the soil as you're planting, or you can scratch it into the surface of the soil. You can also create a tea of your fertilizer by soaking it in the water to pour into the plant's soil as well. Hazelnut shells, people really like these hazelnut shells as a mulch because it keeps cats out of your garden, is what I've heard too. They're very popular around here at Chenard's. Oh, this makeshift drip style irrigation is pretty cool. They used a hose to fill a 5-gallon bucket with a tiny hole in the bottom to provide a drip style irrigation for her apple tree. That is smart. I haven't heard that before. Thank you for sharing that. How frequently do potted blueberries need repotted? Do they like having roots trimmed? And can you reuse the same pot? So that's kind of a loaded question. You're getting into kind of bonsaiing questions, and that's kind of a matter of how big you want your plant to be. Are you trying to bonsai it to keep it small in this container? Are you trying to keep it in the same pot? Or are you trying to maximize its growth and whatnot? So you can look into bonsaiing practices if you're interested in keeping it in the same spot or keeping it same pot or keeping it small, which is like trimming the roots and trimming the shoots to keep it small and keep it bonsaied. Really, the best times to start thinking about repotting is when your plant has eaten up all the soil in the pot. It'll become quite obvious. And these blueberries, they actually have quite a large amount of root growth every year. So you're gonna, it's really just depending on what your roots are doing. You're not gonna want them to be overcrowded. The blueberries, I don't think are gonna like the overcrowdingness. So you're probably gonna wanna generally pot relatively big unless you can do some root trimming and keep it bonsaied. Unless they're like container blueberries that are gonna stay small, then it's just kind of a similar story, but a little bit different. Like I said, it's a little bit loaded here.
As far as my potted blueberries, when I try to keep them to their highest production values, I usually repot about once every 2 to 3 years, and I go up one pot size, if that helps at all.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Can I put the slides up with the different varieties? I can do that. Let's see which ones we're talking about here. Purchasing, cultivars. Which ones are you interested in? Here, we'll go for mature size here. If you're interested in taking a picture of that. We do have quite a few of these at Chenard's right now. I don't know if we have the peach sorbet and jelly bean in right now, but that is something that we likely will get in the future. Ooh, bee event coming up March 5th. That's exciting. Mastergardeners.com. We like that. Anything you can do for the bees is good. All right, let's go to the next slide here if you're interested. Flowering, fruiting time. Seasons may overlap. I'll leave that there for a second if you're interested in taking a picture of that. Taste.
I do have a question in chat asking about sulfur dormant spray. I don't know too much about the dormant sprays on the blueberries. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure if we recommend spraying every year for blueberries or if it's just like when we start seeing issues. As I said, prevention is key. Sulfur dormancy, is it recommended for blueberries along with copper? So is it asking if it's okay to use that instead or in with, do you think? With, since sulfur is an insecticide and a fungicide. Should I grab Darren, you think? I don't know if I know the answer to this question totally.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to have you send your question along to bees@chenards.com, and then I will discuss it with Darren, who's a lot more
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, I can't answer it for you right off the top of my head. But I love the question. Did I make it through all these? Fun options, yes. These fun options are some of my favorites. I love the container blueberries because I move a lot and I have no yard space. Do we have any more questions? Anyone excited? I started blueberries. I see we have some first time blueberry growers on here. I'm excited to hear about that. I started with container blueberries, and this year I just got my first pink lemonade blueberry, and I am super excited about it. They're super delicious. The blueberries are pink, so they don't look like they're even ripe, but then you pick it off the plant, and it just is so amazingly sweet. It's so delicious. Do we have a midnight cascade for sale? Yes, I do believe we have midnight cascades. I think these in this picture on the top shelf there are all midnight cascades, or I think there's another type of cascade that might be there as well. That's not a midnight.
I think sapphire
Sapphire, yeah,
yes.
yes. Yeah, you're totally right. These bountiful blues, they just came in. They're so pretty. They look like they're getting ready to flower even. That'd be exciting to get some fresh blueberries at this time or here soon, if possible. Another 4 to 6 plants, right on. Do you plan on getting like a large variety of them, or do you have just a few that you love that you're going to keep planting? And yes, it is correct that they can live up to 50 years. They are long-term shrubs. Coastal variety. That's a good question. Do you know about those specifics, Camille?
Blueberries should do fine on the coast. Huckleberries are very common on the coast. Visidium ovatum. They've got small blackberries. They can get up to, I think, 12 feet tall, and the leaves are actually heavily serrated, so they've got a different look to them, but they do very well on the coast.
Yeah. I think the only issue you might run into is if you're like living directly on the beach. Other than that, I think they should do totally just fine. If you're like even just a block inland, that does wonders. 2 miles inland, oh yeah, you should be totally fine. I don't think you're gonna see any issues with salt. Older canes, less productive. That's correct. Oh yes, thank you, Camille. I think, here, let me revisit that slide. I think it's a good idea. Sorry. Oh my goodness, let's go. Woo! So yeah, Darren recommends maintaining an equal number of 1, 2, 3, and 4-year-old canes. So I don't think you want to remove all of them, but it's a good idea to have, you know, some of them in there. Thank you, Ted and Sharon. I'm glad you came. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm really happy to be able to do this, and I hope to see you all in and hear about how excited you are that you grew your blueberries and that you're seeing blueberries. And I'm excited to see you successful. So if you have any more questions, please do not hesitate to come into the store or send us email questions at any time. We love to hear from you guys.